In this part 2 video, we're going to talk about turning Mary, and we're going to talk about turning, I'm going to show you how to turn Mary, I'm going to show you how to turn sheep, we'll talk about some of the other parts. If you missed part 1, there'll be a link at the end of this video to part 1 where we introduce the project and show you how to turn the wise men. Okay, time to turn Mary. We're going to turn her in a shape somewhat similar to the wise men, kind of a bullet shape. Now size-wise, Mary's going to be about the same diameter as the wise men, and she's going to be a little bit taller than Joseph, who's squatting down and she's standing up. So, you know, just size that appropriately. Now I'm going to go ahead and part down. We're going to cut off the front of Mary. I've got a flat piece here, so you know, I didn't turn all the way around, so that's where I want it to be, the front. So I'm going to kind of mark this, raise this up a little bit, because we're going to cut it along the front. In other words, we're not going to cut it right through the center. So a little bit, maybe a little bit higher than that actually. That gives us some idea. Okay, so I'm going to part down past that. No, I can't part down past that, or it'll come off. So we're going to go ahead and saw this like that. You got a couple of choices. You can either saw it on the lathe like this and get this at the right height, and you can use a Japanese saw. Flush cut saw takes a little bit longer, so I'm grabbing a saw that's a little bit more aggressive. I forget what you call this one. I'm not much of a flat worker. It's cheaper to buy a new saw than it would for me to sharpen an old American saw. So that's one technique, and it'll certainly work. It just takes a while. But because I have this nice bandsaw jig, that's what I'm going to use. So I cut that line past the parting cut. Now I can go ahead and part this thing off. I'm going to turn a 1/2 inch kind of button to go into the 1/2 inch hole we drilled. So I've got a 1/2 inch caliper. It won't take but just a little bit of cleaning it up, I think, with a skew. I want to chamfer it down just a little bit. Cut off this waste. Take a 3/8 inch spindle gouge and just shape a round face. So let's just sand off the front. Okay, let's chase that one across the floor. Now we're going to fit her dress out of a light colored wood along the front. And I wanted the eye first, just kind of get a feel for my design. So now we're going to turn the part that goes on front her dress. It's going to be very similar to the part that I cut off, but shorter. I kind of marked that, so that'll give me a gauge. I've got a little bit of tailstock damage I got to get past, so I'm using my 3/8 inch spindle gouge to get this round. So, let's see. Diameter. Now I got a ways to go. So let's keep, it's got some nice figure to it. I think it's going to really add to it. I'm going to use this spindle roughing gouge. Come up on his side, take parting cut. And probably ought to use some calipers to measure how wide that's going to be. So let's take the piece, and it's going to be almost as wide as the shawl. Just want a little bit showing, so you know, in my case it comes out about 1.5 inches because I think I'm surprised it's that big. Because of that figure, we're going to get, it looks like I'm getting a little bit of tear out. So let's see how we want to cut this. I think I may get this close. I may use a skew for that. I may get my best cut. Let's see how we do. Come in from this side, put it down. So, here. Yeah, okay, so we're going to part it off right about there. I'm going to just make a marking cut, and we're going to then cut it similar to before. Flip it over to get that last rounded cut. Okay. I'm just going to kind of put this behind it and kind of visualize it. Y'all can probably see that as well. Something like that. Okay. Here. And then we'll sand this off. And this time I'll take off a piece off the front and back, and it'll actually make two Marys, fronts of two Marys. Okay, this picture shows the importance of getting things flat so you don't have a gap. It also shows that the maple that I use for the face is a little bit darker than the tunic and her dress, and I think it'd look nicer if it was a matching very white color. So I'm going to redo the face with box elder. Now let's turn the body of a sheep. I have this small scrap of maple that I turned a rough cylinder on the end of a scrap from another operation, so I went ahead and put it in these spigot jaws. There's no shoulder on it, so it's not as strong as say a 10 for a bowl blank, but it doesn't need to be for this operation. Again, this is somewhat of an egg shape, similar to what we've done for the a little bit for the heads of the wise men. switch to 3/8 inch spindle gouge so I cut actually straight down the middle, because I don't have a very strong chuck hold. Slow the feed rate down to get a nice smooth cut. Need to get the speed up though. Now the back of the body. This is the front of the egg. So to speak. You can turn a little tiny tail, somewhat kind of a caricature tail. I probably ought to sand that when we're doing sanding at all. I've got to do it now. Now I'm just going to have the body. I'm going to turn the head out of a scrap of box elder. The box elder we have down here, we frequently get this nice red coloration. We don't get, rarely do we get burls like they do up in Montana and Wyoming, like Sam Angelo gets to deal with. Wyoming woodturner. Get this thing down to a cylinder. Now I can start shaking it. And I'm going to switch to a spindle gouge. And turn it kind of egg shape. Front of the pointy part of the egg is going to be the, of course, the face. You can either use some friction finish now or spray a little shellac on it when you finish. Slow the speed down to part off. Use a small detail gouge. Catch it. Move in this direction. There we go. There we've got the little head, just a tiny little nib to sand off. For me, the easiest way to cut the ears was to leave it in the chuck to hold it and take it off. Because they're so small, cut a tiny little notch to get your blade started with a sharp knife, and then go ahead and take your flush cut saw. Then you cut it down the middle. Take your time to get those strokes started. I'm using box elder. I'm putting it back on the lathe. This is going to be a tricky part. Parting it off without losing those ears. Get my speed up to just under 1,000. Just finish making it cut right there. Now come in here with a skew or other instrument. And it's chattering a little bit, but it's okay. toe, and there it is. Got two little tiny little ears. So here's a couple of the sheep, a larger one and a smaller one. I've turned a tail on these, but that's not necessary if you want to kind of make it a little more pointed. I probably should have turned the ears down just a little bit more. These were a little small because of the scale I used with a Wiseman 3 inches tall. If you had a larger scale project where the Wiseman were closer to 5 inches, then it would make it a lot easier to turn these ears. Joseph, as shown here, is turned similarly to the Wiseman. In this case, I didn't bother to drill a hole because I knew I wasn't going to spray paint it. I also, after I turned it round, I pulled it forward just a little bit on a slight off-axis on the chuck, and as a result, it gave me a slightly different shape to the front and shoulders, and when I parted it off, it gave him a leaning forward effect. So that's something you might want to experiment with. Make sure the hands are large enough to handle the hole for your staff, in this case a 3/32 inch bamboo skewer. The baby Jesus is almost peanut shaped, and I decorated the bottom with a little dye. The manger, this one's a little crude. It was kind of square with the shoulders rounded off. I think you might do better with turning it from making a little more rounded on the front and back, or basically turn a cylinder and then flatten the top and the bottom, maybe on a belt sander. So have fun with your nativity scene project. I would suggest perhaps turning a larger one might be a little easier because some of these parts were pretty small. Pretty small turnings, especially the ears on the sheep. So I'm going to have a link to a handout with some pictures in the show notes that might help you scale your own model. But like I say, my Wiseman was about 3 inches tall. I would suggest a scale maybe closer to 5 inches might be a better size for a table grouping, and would probably be easier to turn. If you want more Christmas turning projects, click on the playlist for turning Christmas decorations. Y'all stay safe and come on back here.